Hello my quilting friends! My name is Leah Day and welcome back to Mini Block Monday. Today we are piecing another patriotic block. This one is called Star and Stripes. For this block you will need, in a white fabric color, cut 1 2-inch square, cut 5 1.5-inch squares, and cut 4 1-inch by 1.5-inch rectangles. In a blue fabric color, cut 1 2.5-inch square and cut 4 1-inch squares. And in a red fabric color, cut 1 2-inch square and cut 4 1-inch by 1.5-inch rectangles. Let's first piece our flying geese units for the star. For this, you're going to need your white 1.5-inch squares and your blue 2.5-inch square. Place the two white squares on top of the blue square, just like this, so that they're in opposite corners. Then grab a marking pencil and a ruler, and you're going to mark corner to corner on the diagonal. Make sure to take your time lining these squares up so they're just exactly lined up. If you have trouble with this, you can always mark the squares individually off the blue square and then line them all up afterwards. That might be just a little bit easier than trying to line all of this up at once. There we go. So I have a nice blue line. I can really easily see that. I'm going to take this to my machine and stitch 1/4 inch to both sides of that marked line. And here's what it looks like when I get that stitched. I'm going to take a pair of scissors and cut right along that marked line, right down the center. Now this is very delicate because this is on the bias, the diagonal grain of the fabric, which means it's very stretchy. So just be really gentle as you finger press this open and flat. I like to kind of get my fingers in there and just do a simple finger crease like so. Then I take it to my ironing board and I press with a hot, dry iron. This is what it will look like when you get that all prepped up. And because these flying geese are so tiny, you're going to want to grab a pair of scissors and trim the white seam allowance on the back. You might also want to trim up the blue too. I'm just cutting basically right down the middle of it to reduce it so it's only about 1/8 of an inch wide. Now we're going to take our two remaining white 1.5-inch squares, mark a diagonal line from corner to corner, and line them up like this, so that they're nestled into the larger blue corner and that the line that you've marked is radiating outward. That's exactly what you want. Take your time lining this up nicely, then take it to your machine and stitch 1/4 inch to both sides of the line. Do that with both units. And here's what it looks like when you get that stitched. And just like before, we're going to cut right along that marked line and open these out. You can see that creates 4 flying geese units. You're going to want to take your time making these and then trim them down to measure exactly 1 inch by 1.5 inch square. Take your time making these and trimming them apart. Definitely take the time to trim the seam allowance up. As you can see, I did not do that on this one, and it gets really bulky here right around the tip of that blue triangle. So that is a really important step that I forgot to do on these, but it's one of those things that I really think that you should do. When you go to trim this up, make sure to line up your ruler first with this edge where your kind of the arrow of the larger triangle is pointing inward. You want to trim this edge off first, and you'll do that by lining up that 1/4 inch mark with the tip of that triangle. That way you're sure that when you trim this down, you're only trimming off just a little bit. It's like almost a hair of thread. It's not much of anything. And you're trimming off that little triangle, that flag that extends. So it's a very small amount of trimming right along this edge. You're going to end up trimming a lot more off of this edge. And the size that you want to cut all of these down to is 1 inch by 1.5 inches. The next step is to create a set of half square triangles using the red and white 2-inch squares. So I'm going to place these right sides together, grab my ruler and a marking pencil, and mark a line from corner to corner, just like so. Now you're going to take this to your machine and you're going to stitch exactly 1/4 inch to both sides of that marked line. And here's what it looks like when you get that stitched. I'm going to take my scissors and just cut right on that marked line to separate 2 half square triangles. Now for this block you only need 1 half square triangle, so you're just going to take one, finger press that seam allowance open, then press it nice and flat. So once you press that open and flat, trim this half square triangle down to measure 1.5 inches square. Now our last unit to prep is really easy. You simply arrange your red and white 1 inch by 1.5 inch rectangles, and you're going to piece them together in this pattern. Red, white, red, white. And they'll look like this once you get them pieced together. Now let's piece the star together. You're going to arrange the 4 1 inch blue squares with your pieced half square triangles and the last remaining 1.5 inch white square in the center. Piece this together in rows, then piece the rows together, carefully matching these seams. And here's what it looks like whenever you piece your star. This is going to measure exactly 2.5 inches square at this point. And here's the last step. You're going to arrange your star in one corner and half square triangle in the other corner, and then place your pieced rectangle borders in both sides, making sure that you have this established pattern, red, white, through the half square triangle and then into the opposite side. So arrange that nicely, then piece your units together in sets of 2, then piece the 2 rows together, carefully matching the seam. And here is our finished star and stripes block. This should measure 3.5 inches square at this point, and will measure 3 inches square once you piece it to other things. So that's it for this tutorial. If you'd like to find more Mini Block Monday videos, click here to find a playlist of them all. And if you'd like more tips on quilt piecing, click here to find a video with my 5 main tips for piecing successfully. And if you'd like to learn even more, I have written a book about piecing. This is How to Piece Perfect Quilts. You can find it on my website at leahday.com/piece. Until next time, let's go quilt.